you first got into the health and fitness industry, how you sort of established it was something you were passionate about, and how you sort of the route you took to get to where you are.
Well, I started at a young age. I don't know that I would call it the health and fitness industry. For me at the time, it was just bodybuilding. I just wanted to be a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
So I competed when I was 13 years old in 1985, and so I pretty much, I've been pretty much going to be a bodybuilder my whole life. Now, beyond that, as you get a little bit older, sometimes you think to yourself, well, hey, I'd like to live a little bit longer. I'd like to be healthy. I'd like to have a high quality of life. So you start thinking about, what I would call just a more broad health-related aspect instead of just a straight bodybuilding, which, as you know, isn't necessarily the most healthy route.
Yeah.
So, I became very interested. I'm fortunate enough to have a really good doctor that's really smart. He's really sharp. And so he's been trying to teach me a lot since day one, since I saw him back in the 90s. So, when I started talking to him, Dr. Serrano, I started trying to understand, okay, what does it going to take to stay healthy and, to have a good quality of life and all those things. Then my knowledge of things beyond just competing on stage, my desire to learn more really increased. So that was about 19 years ago, actually. So I would say that I've been a bodybuilder since 1985. And I would say, really trying to be a part of something bigger, the whole industry, I would say probably in the last 20 years.
Yeah. What was your sort of your education pathway, if, through college, through university or anything like that? What sort of direction do you take from there in terms of to help you or assist you with the bodybuilding side, if you like?
Well, what I did was I was totally my favorite section in Muscle Fitness magazine was the kinesiology section.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know every muscle origin, insertion, every nerve innervation. I mean, I was completely obsessed with it. So all that stuff, I really, really liked. College originally, I actually wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon. So I went with the hopes of being a surgeon and working on knees, which I really, really liked that aspect. I actually was able to watch some surgeries through some friends of mine who had some good connections and at the hospital and things like that. But when I got to college, man, I'm gonna be honest with you, I had a lazy streak hit me. I didn't do well in my chemistry classes, so I kind of just reverted back to a sports medicine degree, and I never took you had to do an internship. So I took all the classes, but I never actually took the internship because I just wanted to go to the gym when I left college. When school was out for the day, I just wanted to get to the gym as fast as I could. I mean, I literally transferred colleges to be close to a really nice gym. So I ended up getting a generic degree in health and fitness, but I had taken all the, very advanced classes on anything, physiology, kinesiology, biology, all those things. And, so in addition to just trying to learn from the magazines, that's the route I went in college. And then once I got, in the industry and kind of got an understanding of what other educational opportunities are out there, I decided to get my CSCS. I don't know, man. It's been maybe 10 years ago, maybe longer than that.
Yeah.
But I think that organization does a really nice job in SCA. At least they did back then.
Yeah.
I don't quite keep up with them as much now, but I got that certification, and then I got Jose Antonio's ISSN. I got their nutrition certification, which I think they do a nice job with that as well. So I didn't want to go back to college. I wanted to figure out, okay, what are the best certifications in the industry, and so I took those classes. But there's really never an end to it. I study a lot of people's work now. Beardsley, Chris, and Brad Schoenfeld. Brad's a good friend of mine. I study all those guys' work. I try to stay up to date. Dr. Serrano sends me 5 to 10 studies every week to take a look at.
Yeah.
So, the education part, it never really ends. I realize the old saying, the more you know, the more you know, as you learn more, what you really realize is you don't know anything.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that kind of holds true. Like, the deeper I get into this stuff, it just lends to asking more and more questions. You know, you read something, and when I read something, I don't usually walk away saying, now I know all this stuff. What is on my mind is, oh man, now there's a whole other series of questions that I ask based off of reading this. Well, what about this? What about this? You know, like, you see a study on stretching, for example, and you see that when people stretch, say, for 60 seconds, their performance and their strength actually decreases afterwards.
Yeah.
So I start asking questions. I'm like, well, how quickly did they attempt the movement after the stretch? Was it right afterwards? You don't know. So you start asking those things.
Yeah.
But whereas most people would say, well, then stretching is bad. I'm not saying stretching is good or bad. I just like to figure out what all the questions are. What do we really know based on this?
Yeah. And I think a big part of that, and probably a take home for anyone watching, is sort of, I think the finest practitioners and the people that succeed at the highest level are the ones that continue to learn, regardless of age or regardless of how much they think they know. I think as soon as you think you'll know everything, you're already behind. I think it's a big part. I think there's a lot of people who are very, I don't know if it's self-centered or ego, and they go, no, I don't need to learn that. Well, straight away they're probably behind someone else, because there's always something to learn. There's always something new to formulate, and always like you said, there's always questions to ask. I think you've got to be open, no matter what stage you are in the career, to learning new things and developing on essentially old things.
Well, and I get as I read and I try to learn, I get a tremendous feeling of kind of personal accomplishment that I'm trying to make myself better. I'm trying to increase my knowledge. So, it's kind of that never settle for where you're at philosophy, and that's how I was in sports and in bodybuilding, and pretty much anything I've really dug my feet in and really tried to work hard at. Is I've never really been satisfied with where I was. I always wanted to get better. Yeah,
100%. So sort of fast forward to present day now, and this actually changed my question a little bit based off a post that you just put on Instagram, which I read about 10 minutes before this call. My question was going to be about training philosophies, what your sort of training philosophies were, which was then going to lead into training frequency, these sort of things. And then I saw your post, and your post talking about a lot of things which I would like to say I stand for, the same sort of things, where you can talk about the best training program being what's the best exercise, what's the best sets, reps, rest, frequency, all these things, yet one of the big things you touched on was the effort. And if you don't actually want it, then you're going to get subpar results anyway. So I just wanted to kind of touch a little bit on what you kind of just almost posted about, but essentially then leading into a little bit of training philosophies, providing we've got that heart and that effort's there.
Yeah, I tell you, back at an early age, back when I was really, really young, a teenager, I had this fascination with just pushing myself. Like, how hard can I push myself? So in wrestling, maybe they wanted us to run for a half hour. Well, I'd say, well, maybe I want to run for 45 minutes. If in gym class the teacher would say, I want you guys to do 50 push-ups, what would go through my mind is, I want to do more. If everybody else can do 50, then I want to do 60 or 70. Yeah. I always, in my entire life, I've always kind of had this thing in my head where I didn't want to be like everybody else. Like, if everybody else could do X, then I wanted to do X plus 10, right? And that carried over into training. I used to make a lot of, when I was a little bit younger and I could really brutalize myself, I used to make a lot of videos about how hard I would train, and I would show a lot of the stuff I did, and people would I don't want to say everybody, but a lot of people would say that's too much, that's overtraining, and it was working for me. And certainly my experience, you can't just equate it and say, well, then that's the right thing for everybody else. But what I did notice is, I've been a coach for many, many years, and I noticed this weird little thing that the people who worked the hardest were the ones who actually were getting the best results, right? And so I think a lot of people, like, when you go to gyms now and you see what people are doing, I think they're so infatuated with the perfect, like what you said, the perfect number of sets, the perfect frequency. I just don't think they lay it on the line. I don't think they give everything they have in the gym. Yeah. Like, when I used to walk out of the gym, there was two feelings I had. One of them was, thank God I survived that. And the second one was, I can't believe I did that. Like, before I walked into the gym, I didn't even know I was even capable of doing that.
Yeah.
You know, we might have put 900 pounds on the leg press, and maybe we were thinking we could do 20, but somehow you find a way to do something like 40, which was devastating. Those kinds of sets were really brutal. And, you know, I think now that we have all this great information that's coming in, and I think you see people kind of getting away from that hard work every year more and more and more, because they're so you know, focused on all those other little details, which are great details. But the first thing you got to do is, man, you got to make sure you're working hard.
Yeah.
And I just don't see that a lot in the gyms anymore. If you go into most gyms, you know, maybe you'll see a person or two working hard, and everybody else is kind of lollygagging, and you know, and that's great for them if they want to socialize and have fun. I'm all for that. I'm all for that. Just don't have the expectation that that's going to, you know, get you really far. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know, so I just think that that's number one. I just think that, you know, I ask people, well, how hard do you really push yourself? You know, someone might come in and, oh man, I push really hard. And I'll say, okay, well, we're going to do some work today. And like, they're giving up, like where I think the set starts. You know, I'll be observing, and that's where their set ends.
Yeah.
And I'll think, no, this is where the good stuff happens. And I think that kind of philosophy really served me well. You know, there's a fine line, certainly, between insanity and doing too much and not doing enough. But most people don't even ever see the line.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you're worried about that line. Trust me, you're not even anywhere close to it. So, but anyways, that's the point I was trying to make today, is that at the root of your training philosophy, at the very root of your training philosophy, it should revolve around how hard you're working, the effort that you're putting into a set. You know, you don't 3 or 4 to failure during your workout, and of those 3 or 4 sets to failure, are you really taking them to failure? You know, just things like that. That's to me more important than anything else.
Yeah. I think a big thing, I mean, my background before I was self-employed was professional sport and in professional rugby league. And I think nowadays there's a lot of sports science, let's say, equipment available, monitoring tools, GPS data, and all these different sort of measurements and metrics that can monitor daily. And what they're actually kind of finding now, which I'm sure you've seen, is people are now, oh, we've got this to measure that, we've got this to measure that, so everyone's now overtraining. What they're finding is a lot of the injuries are occurring now because people are undertraining. There's a big part of, well, we can't do that, he's fatigued, or he's in a red zone from 3 days ago, so we can't do that. But he's telling me it feels good, but no, this is flagging up, so we can't do it. And then people are breaking down because when they actually need to, when they get to the crunch, and you know, it could be minute 8, you know, an 80-minute rugby game, they get to minute 79 when they're expected to do this, and now can't. So I think going away from, I think there has to be the blend of, forget all the sports science, just work hard, but there's also going to be a little bit of informed practice from that to support what you're doing. But I think you're right. I think you can't overlook the fact that before you even get to the sexy and the fancy stuff, you first and foremost, you're going to work hard. People have done, you know, your Arnolds, these sort of men, you know, who've done what they've done back in the day. And this was on very, very limited research. It was just, well, I'm just going to train hard. You know, as opposed to, I'm not bothered about monitoring this, but now we can do it. I think it almost goes too far the other way with many people.
Yeah, and listen, when you actually go too far, if you hit that overtrained state, I mean, you know,
yeah,
you start getting weak. I mean, everything goes backwards. So, you know, it's not a big mystery. You know, I think the key is to kind of look for some things. You know, as your, you know, like look at your peak power output. Is your strength starting to go down? Does the weight just feel heavier? You know how sometimes you go in the gym and the weight just feels a little heavier. Is it like that every session? Are you starting mentally to not even want to go to the gym? Are you not sleeping well? There's little things like that tells you, hey, you know what? You might want to back off a little. But here's what I tell people. People ask me about periodization in bodybuilding all the time. And I tell them, man, when you feel great, when you feel awesome, keep pushing.
Yeah.
Keep pushing. Don't stop because some book said that after 3 weeks you got to do a deload week. Deload when you need to deload.
Yeah.
You know, a strength sport is a little different than bodybuilding. When you're talking about producing peak amounts of force and strength and peaking for those kinds of events, That's a little bit more scientific, and there's a lot of research done from the Soviets and Bulgarians and all kinds of stuff on that. But when it comes to bodybuilding, it's a little different. It's not as predictable. Some people can handle stress longer. Some people can handle it maybe not as long. There's a lot of factors that come into play, so there is not some blanket template that you can follow in bodybuilding. I really try to get people to trust themselves and give them things to look for when they're in a training program. And when you see these kinds of things, then hey, yeah, maybe you want to pull back. Let's pull back for a couple weeks. Let's drop our failure sets. Let's pour our volume back 20%. Things like that. So, but in bodybuilding, which has kind of been my world, it's a lot more intuitive. It's a lot more instinctual than just laying out a chart.
Yeah, I think just touched on that. I think a lot of people, one of the main questions I get is how often should I train? Should I train 4 times a week? Should I train 8 times a week? And essentially the same answer, as you just said there, is there isn't a cookie cutter. It's very, very individual. And the reality is, the frequency you can train at is by how well you recover between sessions. And I think a lot of people overlook that. But then, like you said, there is no one plan for one person, or there is no one plan which suits everyone. You know, if someone can't recover by training 6 days a week, then you're probably better going to train 4 days a week. And like you're saying, just picking off these little metrics that you go, if you're feeling good, go. If you're not, pull back a little bit. And I think that's a bit. People think that there's just a pill or a magic plan where they just go, if you train 5 days a week, you will get X result. Yeah, for someone that might be mega, and some it might not actually work that well. But other people, they might overcook it. Some people might undercook it. So, like you said, I think it's a big point what you said there, which just reinforces to people that there is no, one plan or one cookie cutter program template plan that is just gonna one size fits all. Everyone develops at a different rate. Everyone recovers differently, and I think giving people these cues and metrics, like you say, just to go, if you feel a bit overcooked, let's pull back, and treating everyone as an individual case, sort of a big take home from a training philosophy. And it's quite refreshing to hear that it's not just 4 days a week works, 5 days a week works, because again, that's different from person to person.
Yeah, 100%. You touched on recovery, and like if there's one thing that I would say to people, it's people are always saying, well, how much did I train? And then they always say, what if I'm not natural or not natural? And the answer is the same.
Yeah.
It's if you're pushing hard, it all comes down to recovery. If you can recover quickly and do more work, do it. Regardless of whether you're taking chemicals or not taking chemicals, regardless of that. If you can't recover, then okay, so now you probably can't train as frequently. Or we need to pull back your volume so it makes it easier to recover. But it all boils down to recovery. You want to work as hard as you can, but still recover. There's no reason to kind of work at half pace and be able to recover well. You still, at the end of the day, you still want to work really hard, but you have to recover from it. So, when you work with people, you kind of got to get an idea of what they can tolerate. The people who can tolerate more and do more and recover better are the ones that actually end up being usually the better athletes, better bodybuilders. I mean, you see this in sports all the time, and you saw this particularly in weightlifting, Olympic weightlifting, and powerlifting. The people that could handle the most stress and recover would be able to train more often. They usually ended up rising to the top. Whereas, when these other countries were trying to figure out who their Olympic athletes were, the ones who couldn't recover from all that work, they just crumbled. Their bodies gave out.
Yeah.
And so people will say, well, this super high frequency training work, the best athletes in the world came from, in the strength world, this kind of training. And I agree, it did. But you also didn't see all the bodies that got broke down and couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a good or a bad thing. I just think that I think the lesson there is just that if people can tolerate more, you give them more. If they can tolerate less, you give them less. You just try to give them what they can handle. When you try to build upon that, you keep trying to build upon it so they can handle a little more and a little more. Sometimes you pull back, sometimes you don't. But again, it all comes down to recovery.
I think that's the luxury of working essentially a lot of time with general population, where you can essentially use them as a little bit of an experiment. You can tweak things. I think when you're talking more whether it be weightlifting or powerlifting, where it's a results-driven industry and a results-driven sport, it is almost like strongest survive. You know, if you've got 20 and there's actually only 3 come through, they're probably going to be phenomenal athletes, the 3 that come through, but then you've got 17 broken bodies.
Right.
And I think that's where it's different from a performance, results-driven industry, and essentially a business, to someone who is wanting to just improve, you know, increase the recovery, increase the performance output, and things you can experiment with. I think that's where there's obviously the 2 slightly different ones, which a few people don't really look at. They might be looking to try and get a program from a results-driven person, yet for their general population needs, and it doesn't really work. One of the other main things I wanted to kind of touch on is based off something on your website, was your nutrition sort of philosophies, because on your website, specifically in your bio, it says about how probably your philosophies or your theories tend to just differ a little bit from the norm. Talking about things like saturated fats, and there's a lot of things coming out about them now that they can be more of a help than a hindrance, and a lot of things about cholesterol. And I just wanted to kind of get your theories on nutrition, how you essentially would strategize nutrition, or is it you go more by feel, or is it calculated to precise, or just your thoughts on nutrition as a general?
Well, the nutrition aspect is really fascinating to me because the information just keeps coming. Sorry, I heard a little echo there. So back in 2006 or 2007, somewhere around that time frame, I was participating in a lot of boards on the internet, different websites and different boards, and nobody was really talking about the quality of food. Everybody was talking about how many grams of protein do you need, how many calories do you need. And that's pretty much how I was raised as a bodybuilder too. You know, you try to get up to these unbelievable amounts of protein and calories, and therefore give your body the fuel it needs to grow. But one of my friends, the doctor I was telling you about, Dr. Serrano, all the way back in the late 90s when I started with him, he was asking me about, do you know much about meat that has been grass-fed or fish that has been wild-caught versus farmed? And he started asking me all these questions, and I started doing more research in the early 2000s to look at the actual quality of the food itself. Still the same number of calories. The micronutrients would certainly be a little different sometimes. For example, grass-fed meat might have a little different level of omega-3s. You know, nothing major, but a little different. Maybe some more fat-soluble vitamins, maybe. But what I did was, when I started looking at my food sources, I started getting my meat from a farmer that was kind of on the outskirts of town here. Really good guy, just one of those farmers that really took care of his herd, took care of his cows, and kind of did all this stuff the ethical way. I started getting my chickens from a guy that had chickens. I could go out there, I could see him running around. And I always noticed that when I got the eggs from his chickens, that the yolks were really orange. So I was always wondering, why is the color of his yolks always so orange and so bright? You know, and you start reading things about different carotenes that are in the yolks and how much better they are nutritionally. And I started noticing the food tastes better. The eggs tasted better, the meat tasted better, the fish tasted better. So I started using these different sources of food that I felt were more natural, that were a little more healthy, and I started seeing my blood work changing. It started changing really positively. You know, I would look at my lipid panel, I would see that my HDL was up, I would see that my LDL was down. Now we can also have a good debate on whether those numbers even mean anything or not. But I started seeing some changes. So my point was, something was changing in my body based on the food I was, because I was still probably around the same calories. But and listen, man, I am fanatical about blood work. I have a stack of blood work like you wouldn't believe. I mean, ever since the 90s, I've got a stack this big of blood work. So I'm pretty in tune with all my numbers and everything. I mean, I test things like myeloperoxidase for inflammation, in addition to whatever, you know, in addition to the highly sensitive C-reactive protein. I test a lot of stuff. I started noticing the inflammation levels in my body were going way down. The HSCRP in particular, which is a great measure for inflammation. I started noticing big changes there. I actually noticed my hemoglobin A1C was getting better. It's great to look at fasting glucose, and I actually really like looking at fasting insulin too. The hemoglobin A1C is a little different because it gives you a little bit more of a. It's not acute. It's over a period of time. It's over a period of 30 days. So I started noticing all these changes that I think were positive, and the food tasted better. It involved a little bit more work. Now I had to drive to get some of my food to different farms and things like that. But I started writing about it on these forums. And it was pretty new to people at the time. I was even talking about things like raw milk. Raw milk is very hard to get. And I don't get it anymore because it's just too hard to get. It's too much of a hassle. But even raw milk, my joints felt better. I had some friends that I was training that were lactose intolerant. They could drink raw milk. They thrived on it. My kids actually started drinking raw milk at 1 year old, and they drank. I had them drink it for maybe a couple years, and they did fantastic. They never got sick. Everything was great. So anyway, I started writing about this stuff in 2007, 2008, and it was pretty new in bodybuilding. If you go way back, you'll see guys that ate like that, but it was because that's just the way people ate.
Yeah.
That was just more typical of how you ate. It wasn't because they necessarily knew all the differences and had all the junk that we have available to us now. But, many, many years later, people really quit eating like that. So I think what I brought to the industry is people started talking about it at least. And whether you're a grass-fed believer in grass-fed meats or not, at least it brought up the discussion and people start talking about it. For me, I'm a little bit of a food snob, so once I've had grass-fed meat, I don't want to get the stuff that tastes crappy and leaves a layer of grease in my mouth that tastes. And you start to notice these things when you eat a certain way.
Yeah.
So that was so one of the things I really cared about. You asked me about my nutrition philosophies. It was okay. Let's look at the food sources. But then it becomes okay. We have some good food sources. So how do we eat to perform? And you get these people that are zealots, like they're anti-carb or they're anti-fat, and it's just like with training. They assume their way is the best for everybody. Mm-hmm. Look, I know people that do keto diets, they do great. I know people like myself that do higher carbohydrate diets, and I do great. There's no one set answer for everybody, but I do think when you train really, really hard, there are ways that you can recover better. There are ways that you can perform better. And I think that that took on the root of my kind of training nutrition. I've always said that the way you train and eat should fit each other.
Yeah.
So if you're going to go do a high volume workout, let's say you're going to do a 90-minute leg workout, I'm probably not going to do that on no carbs because I'm going to get into the workout and I'm not going to be able to perform. But if I'm going to go do a 30-minute Olympic weightlifting workout, doing some singles and doubles, it probably doesn't make sense for me to jam 150 grams of carbs. Mm-hmm. So what I tell people is, okay, first of all, you got to look at the way you're training, and then your eating should support that, or vice versa. If you're eating a certain way, then you have to train. They have to mesh, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And then if you look at the way I like to train, I'm pushing people pretty hard. They're not 30-minute workouts. They're 60-minute workouts, 70, 80-minute workouts. They're somewhere between an hour and a half, and they're working really hard. So it would make sense to give somebody some usable fuel. It would make sense for somebody to use some carbohydrates around training. Not only for fuel, you'll get, depending on the way you eat the carbs and the amount of fat you have, you can potentially have a nice steady level of insulin. That's going to lower your cortisol levels. That's going to lower your muscle protein breakdown, which means you're going to recover much, much easier. So you can come back and train hard. There's this thing now where people say nutrient timing doesn't matter. I see it everywhere. And that's fine. People can believe what they want to believe. But in my opinion, when you're training hard, nutrient timing absolutely matters.
Yeah.
What you're eating around training, what you're eating after training, that window, it absolutely does matter. Now, does nutrient timing matter to the guy who just wants to go in the gym after work and just get a little bit more healthy and just work out a little? Yeah, he probably doesn't need to be as precise. He can probably just eat his meals, making good meals, and not sweat it. But I'm used to working with people that are at a high level in bodybuilding. Like everything counts. Like that extra 5 or 10% of results or somebody who's already at a high level can take them up 3 placings in the Mr. Olympia.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
You know, or somebody that's been trying to get a pro card for many, many years, that extra 5% or 10% might get them their pro card. So my training philosophies and nutrition philosophies, they mesh, and what they really promote is not only the hard work, but the recovery. So it's one thing for me to sit here and tell you how everybody has to work hard, but then your nutrition plan has to support that.
Yeah.
You have to have it set up so that you're recovering from that. If you don't recover from it, then it's broken. It's not going to work. So putting all this stuff together, to me, is how I try to get people to reach their potential the fastest without wasting time. I look at the quality of food and then the way the person is training, their nutrition should support that. So I'm not like anti any macro. I'm not anti-fat. I'm not anti-carbs. You know, you mentioned saturated fat. People are like, "Oh, saturated fat is so terrible. It raises all these things. You get heart disease and blah, blah, blah. It raises cholesterol levels in your body." Well, you know, let's say it does. Total cholesterol that number has proven to be meaningless. That's one thing I can say with pretty much certainty. Unless there's a very bad genetic defect where someone's total cholesterol was sky high, 3, 4, 500. Your numbers are probably a little different where you measure them. But, saturated fat, it kills your insulin sensitivity, at the cell membrane. It's going to make the cell membrane structure too rigid. Cells won't pass in and out. Well, yeah, if you sit around and eat sticks of butter all day, that might be a problem. But to be totally scared of eating any saturated fat at all, is a little silly to me. To be scared of eating carbohydrates because carbohydrates just make you real fat. I know people have differing levels of insulin sensitivity, but hey, when you train, there are ways to overcome that. When you train, your muscle cells will take in nutrients at a much better rate than they would outside of the training window. You have the benefit of mechanical stress from the training itself, which increases the insulin sensitivity in your muscle cells. And then you have, if you've eaten some carbohydrates, you have your pancreas releasing insulin. So, you have insulin going for you. And insulin drives, it's a transporter.
Yeah.
Insulin helps drive, that's why people take insulin around training. It helps drive nutrients. So you have this wonderful opportunity around training where your cells are more tilted towards storing nutrients into the muscle cell as opposed to the fat cell. So, if you structured your diet so that most of your carbs are around times when you're more, sensitive to that, then you can kind of, I don't want to say you can beat poor insulin sensitivity, but you can get better and better. And by the way, if you're not eating a lot of carbs around those other times, that's going to generally help improve your insulin sensitivity anyway. Yeah. So anyways, I do believe in the quality of your food. I believe in structuring the nutrition to support your training, and I do believe in nutrient timing. Those things to me are very important.
So in terms of, I was just spoken a little bit about carbs and fats there. In terms of protein, would you generally have a guideline for where you would start? Majority of people, depending on grams per kilo body weight or pounds body weight, or would you play them literally just as you would with the carbs and the fats and just trial and error and adjust as you went along?
It's interesting. I will put together someone's meal plan, and I won't even, just based on what I think they need, and I won't even look at their calories. I won't look at their grams of protein until I'm done.
Yeah.
And then when I'm done, it's funny, like the numbers are always real similar. It's almost always 40% protein, 40% of the calories come from protein, 40% of calories come from carbs, and 20% come from fat. And the protein usually ends up to being 1 to 1.25 grams per pound of body weight.
Yeah.
So I don't have these rules, but when I build plans that I think are good plans, they almost always look like that. It's always like that 1 to 1.25 grams of protein per pound. So if someone weighs 200 pounds, they're probably going to eat 200 to 250 grams of protein. I will say this, though. There are also many people that do better on lower protein, and that's kind of bad to say in the bodybuilding world, right? You can't have lower protein. But there are a lot of people that don't handle large amounts of protein well. They get constipated, they feel sluggish, they don't feel good. So a lot of times I'll pull their protein down to like maybe say a 200-pound guy, maybe he'll go down to 175 grams, but I'll just bump his healthy fats and his carbs up, and he feels better.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have any allegiance to any kind of dieting. The only allegiance I have is to my clients and whatever helps them get to their goals the quickest. But generally speaking, it's funny. It's always that 40, 40, 20. It might be like 41, 39, 19. I mean, it's always
thereabouts. Yeah.
And 20% of calories from fat may sound low to people, but I'm putting avocado in people's diets. I'm putting fish oil, specifically EPA and DHA in their diets. I'm using healthy nuts in their diets. I'm not like eliminating fat by any stretch. I'm just not loading them up with tons of fat.
Yeah. So a question which I actually had that got sent over was one of your sort of, I guess, key probably things that you're probably very, very well known for is probably the condition that you've got into on stage. Now, one of the questions that I had was crazy condition in quotes. Would you essentially just reduce calories as needed to get to that desired outcome, or is there a little bit more meticulous planning to it, or is it literally just a case of there's some more to come off here, drop some calories? Is it any more complex than that, or is it literally just there's more to come away, drop them again?
That's a great question, and I would say it is a little more complex. Yes and no. So, what happens to your metabolic rate when you lower your food intake? It goes down, right?
Yeah.
So you can only go down so low, and then your metabolic rate is going to compensate. It's going to get lower and lower and lower, and then you're going to get tired. So what else is going to go down? Your NEAT, right? Your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, whatever that stands for. So now you're not burning as much. So to me, you need to go down that path of lowering calories, and I don't care if it's from fats or carbs. I really don't care. I do like to keep the carbs in around training because under no circumstance should your training be impacted, your energy levels during training. But yes, you have to keep whacking those calories down. But you're going to come to a point where you get stuck. And when that happens, to me, you have to eat extra. It might be one meal, it might be 3 meals, it might be for a day, but it depends on how deep you went into that hole.
Yeah.
So when you do that, you kind of your body says, okay, man, I'm not starving. My metabolism can pick up a little bit. And listen, you can debate how much you need to eat to really truly raise your metabolic rate. I understand people are going to say, John, the science doesn't support one meal. I'm cool with that. I understand. But I'm telling you, I can give people a big meal or two when they're down, and it brings them right back up. They start sweating.
Yeah.
You know, maybe you've had that happen when you've been dieting, and then you eat some carbs, and all of a sudden you break out into a sweat. You know, your body heat's going up, and if your body heat's going up, you're burning more calories. Or think about this. People are like totally by the numbers. And so I'll say, okay, what would happen if you went into a caloric surplus? And they'll say, well, you'll gain weight. I'll say, okay, well, I'm taking bodybuilders and I'm pushing their calories down. They get stuck. I double their calories for a day and they lose weight. So you tell me what happened. Because you just told me that if I put them in a caloric surplus, they're going to gain weight. You just told me that only doing it for a couple meals or for a day is not enough because that's what the science says. But I'm telling you, I get people past their plateaus. They eat a bunch and then they get tighter and then they have more energy and then their metabolic rate, something is happening so that they can, then all of a sudden they start losing more weight again. Maybe it's just that they got a little bit of energy and they can walk around more. Maybe it's that. But I don't know. But what I can say without a shadow of a doubt is if you don't have that intuition and you don't know when to make those changes, then your people are going to get stuck.
Yeah.
If it's purely a numbers game for you, it's going to work for a while, but there will come a point when you'll get stuck. And that's when you got to trick your body into saying, it's okay to keep burning body fat. I got to keep the metabolic rate higher. So to go back to the original question, to get that condition, it's pretty easy for me to get down to 5 or 6%. It doesn't really take a whole lot of effort. I can just pull my calories down some. But then to get to that next level, the crazy condition, becomes very hard.
So you're talking there specifically more refeed days and adding refeed days in as and when required?
Yeah, I mean, when you get down to that point, it's like, okay, I'm stuck. I want to get a little bit leaner, but I can't continue to take my calories down low because they're already at 1,600 calories, and I'm 225 pounds, right? So, what I'll do is I'll say, okay, for the next, 2 meals, I'm going to eat extra. And then the next morning I might wake up and I look better and I'm a pound lighter, but I just ate more calories. And this isn't just with me. This is with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients. You see this. And any coach will tell you the same thing. There's times when they give people extra food and the next day they're tighter, they've lost a few pounds.
Yeah.
That this just happens in bodybuilding. It's not, it's a little bit of an art to it. When to do that, how much to give people. If I do that, the next day I'm bloated and I gained 2 or 3 pounds, and I probably went overboard. It didn't have the desired effect. But to me, getting that ultra crazy condition requires you push calories down, 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 and then you know when to come up for air. Yeah. Like you're almost drowning, you're about to die. But then you get some food and you come up, you get a little bit of air, then you go back down and you suffer. It sucks. You have no energy.
Yeah.
You don't think right. Your brain doesn't work right. There's all kinds of chemical stuff that's going on in your head that's not right. And to be able to tolerate that, it's to get into that condition, it's mental warfare. It's mental warfare. It's how much can you handle. And some people in a sport like that. They like that suffering, and some people can't handle it. We're not. I can't handle it now as much as I could in my 20s. In my 20s, I almost took pride in the ability to suffer. But I can't quite handle it as well now. And that's kind of how people are too. You can't assume that every single person is going to be able to handle that. But they're not going to. If they can't handle that, they're probably never going to get into that kind of condition that blows people away, though.
I think it probably goes back to the original point right at the start about training philosophies and effort. I think they probably go hand in hand. I think if you, right. I think you might tell me different, but you're probably rarely going to find someone who's got that effort in the gym to give everything they can, yet can't take themselves to that place. They're going to work hand in hand, them two things, and vice versa. You're also going to get people who are never going to put themselves in that position in the gym. They're also never going to put themselves in position in the nutrition front as well. So that was interesting. I think a lot of people, all relative to leptin and like you said about your resting, metabolic rate and things like that.
Right.
I think a lot of people struggle to understand that. When I've educated people and I spoke about we're going to add this in, extra. I can't eat more carbs. I can't have more, because of this. They start going, and it's like almost trust the process of this is why, this is what happens, and it is an art, rightly or wrongly. It's leptin hormones, it's things like that, but people don't really understand that, and I think people just presume that they can just, I feel like I need to lose more weight, I'll just take more calories and more calories and more calories. And actually, some people end up gaining more by taking more away, because then leptins are that low that they actually end up storing some stubborn body fat anyway.
Well, and then, you have people that can't, a really common issue with people that compete is they can't sleep at night. Mm-hmm. They get to that suffering point, they can't sleep. And what happens when you don't sleep?
No rest, recovery, yeah.
Your leptin goes down and your ghrelin goes up. So if your ghrelin's going up, you're going to be hungry, and your leptin's going down, you're not going to have that satiety hormone telling your brain, okay, we're good to go. And then your cortisol levels go up, so that makes your insulin levels go up, and your insulin sensitivity goes down. This is all proven. If you got on PubMed and you look at the sleep studies, when they take people down to 4 hours of sleep, all of this is very wide. It's very easy to read and understand. So you have all these things going on, and then also one of the side effects is people tend to crave sweets. So you have all these things chemically working against you. You have higher ghrelin, you have lower leptin, you have higher cortisol, higher fasting insulin, lower insulin sensitivity, and that's all from a lack of sleep. So your answer to someone, it might not be, I need to do anything with calories. It might be, I'm going to make you sleep for 8 hours. You got to figure out a way to do that. Mm-hmm. You might be turning their computer off 2 hours before they go to bed. It could be anything. It could be not exposing them to any blue light for 6 hours, as much as you can. It might be some supplements that help them sleep. It could be anything, but there's other things to look at too that factor into all these things that are going on hormonally with people.
Yeah, 100%. So another one, another question I had through based on nutrition was more dieting natural athletes, specifically women. how low would you tend to go with fats, and what source of fats would you use?
Women tend to do better. In my opinion, women can handle lower carbs and higher fat better than men can. I don't really know if there's any science exists that would support that. There's probably not, to be honest with you. It's just one of the things that I see. Women tend to have, and I've read before that women tend to have a higher slow twitch muscle fiber count. They have longer to exhaustion when they train, so they can train longer. So if they have those things going for them, it would make sense that they don't need as many carbs as guys do. But I'm really leery about taking all the fat out of women's diets, and one of the reasons why is because it can have some negative effects on their hormones. You're already fighting a hormonal battle when you're trying to get a woman super, super lean. Mm. Like when you're trying to get a woman to 7, 8, 9% body fat, you're already fighting a really tough battle. They might lose their period. There's all kinds of things that can happen that make it really tough on women. And I think that these ultra low fat diets for women, I think they tend to backfire if they stay on them. Yeah. And this is what happens with women. They tend to compete more because their classes, it depends on what class they're in, but the figure girls, bikini girls, all those girls, they don't need to be quite as ripped, so they compete more often. Mm. And so that one diet that they could probably survive, it becomes another diet, and then another diet, and another diet, and the next thing you know, they've been dieting for 11 months out of 12 months out of the year. So not only has their metabolic rate came down, and oh, by the way, when you suppress your metabolic rate for that long, it takes a long time to come back. Yeah. You don't just do a controlled post-contest diet for a week and everything's back to normal. That's not how it works. No. It might take 3 months. It might take 6 months. So I'm a little leery about having women compete constantly and about particularly lowering women's fat. You could probably make the same argument with men and how their testosterone levels are affected by low-fat diets and things like that. But from what I see, just from what I observe with women, it's even more so. Like, you got to be really careful taking women's fat out. So I'll typically leave in, some coconut oil to cook with. Leave in a little bit of avocado. Sometimes they use it with their chicken or things like that. And I'll definitely have EPA and DHA in there. I hear people say, well, I'm not adding any fats. Well, where are you getting your EPA and DHA? Those things, you have to provide them in the diet. Like, your body can't make it. That's why they're called essential fatty acids. So I'm always going to make sure I got their fish oil in there, the EPA and DHA, and then just kind of like a little balance of fats. Then again, they don't need to be eating sticks of butter or anything crazy, but I wouldn't take them down. 30, 40 grams of fat is probably, that's getting down there. When you start going 10, 15, 20 grams, that's way down there. Yeah. That's way down there. So, I think if I were to pop open all my plans that I have for women that I work with, they're probably going to get down to 30 grams, maybe 40. But I don't really like to go beyond that.
So if you were taking someone, again, talking about crazy condition, which, like you said, slightly different for females, or depending on what they're competing in, it is males, would you rather take some more away from the carbs as opposed to the fats if you were going to go super low on the calories?
I tend to do more carb reductions personally.
Yeah.
Not everybody. Some people, I strip down their fat, but that's usually men. Men, you can take their fat down really low, and as long as they're not competing all the time, they seem to do okay. They can bounce back from that. So I'm not as concerned with taking fat down real low for men. So with men, we can take carbs or fat down. I will usually take carbs down, and then once I get down to where there's only carbs in the peri-workout window, if they still need to get more of a calorie reduction, then I'll start pulling more fat out.
Yeah.
Then you might start taking a couple of the whole eggs, and it's all egg whites. Not that egg yolks are bad, they're not. But it's just a matter of getting calories.
Yeah, from a calorie standpoint, yeah.
Right. So it might be going from a fattier cut of meat down to a lean cut of fish. Maybe more of your meals are like that. And again, it's just to get the calories down. So I tend to start with taking out carbohydrates that are away from the workout, and then when they're all gone, and the only thing left is carbs around the workout, my next step is usually, okay, now let's start pulling more fat out. And then if you pull all the fat out and you're still not in shape, then it's like, damn, this is going to be hard.
Yeah.
So then you got the extreme cases where now it's tough. That's when the people are really going to have to suffer.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people, and again, it goes back to the individual cases. Some people really need to go to that dark place, and I'm sure you've worked with plenty of people who actually, they can get away with a hell of a lot of food in comparison to other people. And they go, actually, I don't even feel like I'm suffering. And they end up in shape, right. and they just go, you know what, I feel mega. And you look at them and you think, God, they're on this, and they're on this, and these are an absolute hole.
Yeah, when I was working with Fuad Abiad a couple years ago when he won his first pro show.
Yeah.
He won 2 shows, and he got second in the other one he did. I had him down to 2,200 calories. Now, Fuad's a 260-pound beast.
Yeah.
And to get the look we wanted, we had to take him down. It might have been 2,400. It was either 2,200 or 2,400. But for a guy that big,
yeah.
You know, I mean, that's low. You know, and then I've had 180-pound dudes that I didn't go below 3,400.
Yeah.
It was just a different situation.
Yeah.
And it's just fun. That's one of the interesting and fun things about coaching is people are so different. You know, same thing with women. I've got a girl now that's getting harder, and she's at 2,200 calories. And I'm like, you're eating the same thing I'm eating.
Yeah.
And she's getting leaner. And then I have some women that honestly I've had to take them down to 800-900 calories. I don't like to do that, but sometimes you have to do it. And then you just got to make sure that they recover well. So it's it varies so much between people.
And again, I think it goes back to the weekend warrior, or the general population wants to be a little bit healthier and lose a little bit of body fat, and then it goes to the results-driven performance side. You know, like you just said there, you don't want to technically take anyone to that 800, 900 calorie point, but actually, if that's what it takes for this result, then that's what's needed. You know, I would never dream of putting someone from the general public on 800 calories. Yeah, it's a completely different. You know, it's a completely different standpoint if you're then pushing for a first place, and you know you're in that different sort of industry from the performance results-driven side.
Yeah, I got to watch myself too, because not everybody I coach has competitive aspirations. Some people I work with just want to get in better shape.
Yeah. And
sometimes I got to be careful. Like, look, they're not trying to be Miss Olympia. They're not trying to be Mr. Olympia. They just want to get in better shape. So just chill out. Don't kill them. Sometimes I got to tell myself that.
And I think a lot of with from what I've found with people like that, it's more from an education point of view. Actually educating them and empowering them is going to leave them with better lifestyle changes anyway. Whereas when you're coaching someone to compete, it is literally you need to do this, and do not deviate. Right. Whereas, like I said, I think education is a better standpoint in putting the power in their hands from a general population point of view. Choose this over this much, not this much, and as opposed to just this is what you must eat day in day out. Because a big thing, which again I'm sure you're keen on with general population from my standpoint, is adherence. That's probably first and foremost, really, before I even get into let's just choose this and this. If you can't, it could be the best thing in the world. If you can't adhere to it, then you got no chance anyway. That's
right. Yeah, you got. I mean, you look at their lifestyle. You know, how many meals can they realistically fit in? Yeah. Is it 2? Is it 6? You know, I don't know. You got to look at their lifestyle. You know, how busy are they? What kind of foods do they like and not like? They're, you know, if you tell somebody, okay, you're going to eat chicken and rice 6 times a day. What if they don't like chicken?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, if you tell someone they're going to eat 6 times a day, but they're in meetings in a corporate job at work, they can't just bust out a steak and rice and right in the middle of a meeting. So it's totally different, man. You gotta look at their daily, their lifestyle, and all that, and then to your point, figure out okay what's actually going to work.
Yeah, 100%. So last one, just before we wrap up, is who would, if you could pick any, you could have a top 3 if you wanted, but who would be the greatest influence over your career so far to kind of stand you from where you started and kind of where you're at now? Who's been if there might be one person, there might be 3 people, the greatest influences over your career?
Oh, that's an easy one. from a mentality perspective with bodybuilding, it was always Tom Platz.
Yeah.
Yeah, just from a mentality perspective. I also was greatly impacted by Louis Simmons when I was doing powerlifting with Westside Barbell.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed my time with Louis. Really enjoyed it. He was a big influence on me. And then, there's a couple other people too. There was he's actually coming to see me next week, and we're going to make some videos. There's a guy named Mike Madsen who was my first ever coach when I was 20 years old. Actually, I was 19 years old. Mike gave me a great foundation, and his whole foundation was on hard work and eating smart, and that's it.
Yeah.
But he drilled it into my head at a young age. Mike and I are still really, really good friends to this day. That was back in 1992. He was working with me, and he worked with me for 2 or 3 years. And then I got a friend, Dave Tate. Dave owns Elite FTS.
Yeah.
He was a powerlifter. Dave was a huge influence on me in terms of business, and just a great training partner. Dave and I spent many years training together, just pushing each other to our absolute limits. I mean, just doing stuff that would seem crazy. But Dave has also been a huge influence on me. I love the guy. But I think those are the people that I would say have had the biggest influence on me.
Some great names as well. I think when it comes down to someone like yourself, there's never going to be just one person. I think because you've said obviously you're a guy who likes the education side and you're constantly learning from different things. I think there's never going to be just one person. Just like there's never going to be one book or one theory or one way of doing things. I think it's going to be you take bits from there and you pull that bit. You might discard some bits you don't like, and then you take a bit from there and you kind of create that, and you sort of come up with 4 there who you've kind of gone, well, that's my mentality side and that's that side. So some big names in there as well. Louis Simmons, read quite a lot of his stuff from when I was doing quite a lot of work at university with the strength stuff, and someone who actually would be keen at some point. I'm not sure what his technical knowledge is like with Skype and things like that, but he's someone who actually would love to get on something like this and kind of pick his brains behind that. But listen, that's been absolutely mega. I've taken up about an hour of your time. I hope it's not taking too much of your time. But that's been absolutely mega. So I want to thank you again for your time, first